So, lower back injuries and sciatica sort of plagued me a fair bit from my very early 20s. It's something I still suffer with a fair bit today. The shoulder was something, even though I had very good physio and very good sort of recovery, and I would get massage regularly, all those things. I mean, taking care of your body in tennis, it's very physically demanding and it gets our body very unbalanced, So, I would go to the gym a lot. I would do a lot of things. One thing I would do differently would be I would probably combine what I know now about marathon running into my tennis a little bit more. I would be
okay. Like what?
I'd be a little bit more aerobically fit. And I know that I've got a friend who's still a very, very good tennis player here. He still hits with, knows guys like John Millman and stuff who are still, touring pros. And Johnny Stamanovic, Johnny, Johnny.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
He's still a very, very good player. But I can get out on the court with him and my fitness is not compromised with him because of the aerobic capacity that I have. I don't have the explosiveness and I don't have the speed I used to have, but I can go for 2 hours. And I think people underestimate, just the strength of aerobic fitness. And I was always very fit, and I would say I never lost a match due to fitness. But having that aerobic fitness, even now, I notice, I'm in my mid-40s, I can still go for 2 hours and I'm not tiring. And I put that down to some of the aerobic stuff. So,
okay.
I would start to look at some of that with juniors now, just some very low intensity running over sort of times. It's not intense work, and it helps balance your body and the other energy systems that we need to play long tennis matches. Because when you see some of the 5-set battles at Grand Slam level, and keep in mind that's only 4 tournaments a year we really see 5-set tennis, but you've got to have the endurance to be able to go throughout a whole year and not break down physically, and consistent weeks after weeks and months after months of prolonged tennis. You'll find your best tennis when you get on the circuit after about 4 weeks, I find. So the first 2 or 3 weeks on tour, you're still adapting. You'll adapt to the speed a little bit because it goes up a little bit in intensity. The matches are a little bit harder. You'll physically take a little bit more to recover. But once you're sort of 3 or 4 weeks into that, your body starts recovering from those that grueling sort of schedule and the travel. And that's when you want to be able to, financially continue and physically continue. Because once you get 2-3 months into extended period, that's where you'll start to get the results on the board from a world ranking points scenario, I believe.
All right. Next question. We got more here. What do most coaches look for in a player when they want you to be their coach or go to their school? Because a lot of our players are scholarship bound, play NCAA tennis south of the border in the United States.
Yeah, good question. Well, I was actually offered a scholarship to the States. I can't remember what year it was. I would have been in, early 20s, and I think it was South Carolina. I was offered a scholarship to come over to the States. So that's a good question. Look, I think the character of you as a human being is probably some of the most important stuff. And there's no doubt they'll want to recognize talent. US college tennis, I think, is a pathway to not only just the sports, but also, some of the academic stuff. So one of the qualities I would suggest that they look for, and I don't know because I'm not a recruiter for them, but I would say the willingness to learn, to have that humbleness, and be really open to learning and growing, I think would be one right up there on my list. And I can even tell you that from sort of, I guess, my experience now in business and looking for the right people. When you've got people that have any sort of level of arrogance and unwillingness to learn and know it all and all that sort of stuff, it's a bit of a red flag. So I think just being really open to learn and but at the same time have a good sense of yourself and have a good certainty in yourself and your talents and what you bring, but without that sort of drifting into overconfidence and arrogance. I think it's just be really humble and have the right work ethic and that sort of stuff. You really got to put in, and I would say contribute to the school and the community that you're looking to go to as well would be a big factor.
And that one's tricky, right? Because you can't sell yourself, because the whole character they're looking for is humility. And that's one of those things you just have to trust the process do everything you can, work hard, and they'll recognize that. Because I know a lot of players, they kind of feel like, but I want him to know how hardworking I am. And I can't see
Yeah.
that in a video or in a ranking.
Yeah, and I think there's ways of doing that and saying that, and like honestly, that some of that stuff comes back to some pretty basic selling skills and in the way we actually communicate. So, and there's a lot of psychology around the way we actually communicate and stuff. So, I think it's okay to sort of say, look, I'm not very good at selling myself. What I can tell you is how hard I work. Here's my training regimen. Here's what I do nutritionally. Here's my sleep patterns. Here's the disciplines I put upon myself and the standards I hold myself to. I think you can still, in a sort of backhanded way, kind of still sell yourself with some very factual stuff.
Yeah.
And you can kind of preface it by sort of saying, well, I'm not very good at selling myself. It's not, I love my sport and I love to learn and I love to grow and adapt. And this is how hard I like to work. So I think there's ways of doing it, but it's
that's a good point.
Yeah,
okay, we got a few more here, and we want to get through it before the video ends. All right. What advice would you give to someone who can't finish writing his book? This guy's asking for a friend.
Oh man, well I got lots of advice on that, and we'll first get Johnny to help you. He was my chief editor, so but look, the story of my book was I lost that book twice. I had a laptop stolen when I was checking into a hotel in Sydney, and I had to literally start again from scratch. I had 180 pages gone. Before that, I had a laptop burn out where a hard drive literally burnt out, and I had to start again from scratch. So that book, Subconscious Goal Setting, was written 3 times. So I know intimately how hard it is to finish a book. I think, look, at some point you've just got to let it go. But if you're still struggling with gaps in chapters and stuff like that, a great character trait is how you get to the finish line. And you see that in marathon running. I think you see that in tennis matches, the way people can knuckle down and finish things off. It's not over until it's over. I think there's a human quality that's very important to everything that we do in life. And the way we finish off a tennis match is don't relax because you're 5-2 up and you can finish this guy or girl off. Maintain your standards and finish it with the quality, so you can look back on that match and go, I was able to maintain that quality throughout. So I think the same thing applies to writing a book as well. Daily discipline. Carve out that time that you're going to get up and write. And look, some days you'll write nothing. Some days you'll write 3 paragraphs and it's all junk, but at least you've done it. It's about doing the daily push-ups. Some days you get bigger benefit from it than others. And, so I just think it's that daily discipline. You've got to look at it as a human characteristic to get in there and finish it off. But with a book, there is a certain point I can tell you that you've just kind of got to let it go and put it out there to the world. And that's a challenging thing to do emotionally. But,
right.
That's when you go from making it yours to making it others.
Right. All right, next one. And I think what I'll do is I'll say who it is. Because, Scott, you can see the participants on here, right?
Yeah, I can see a few of them, and looks like a couple might have fallen off their chairs, but yeah.
Okay. So this is from Alyssa. Is tennis popular in Australia? And if so, how popular is it?
Yeah, Alyssa, look, tennis is really popular in Australia, and I've noticed it probably shift over the last 20 years a fair bit as well. I used to think Victoria was probably the strongest state in Australia for tennis, and it's still very, very strong and big down there. There's a very strong club atmosphere in Victoria where there's a lot of tennis clubs. So in Queensland here, it's a bit different to that. There's a lot more tournaments and a lot more fixtures. So they have a series of money tournaments where almost every weekend you could be, at a state level, sort of cruising around and doing tournaments and stuff like that. But there's not the club environment. One of the things I really loved about Victoria was the club environment. You have teams of fixtures, I guess, where clubs play against other clubs, a little bit like, basketball or ice hockey, or different clubs play other teams. And you'd have, 4 people on a team where you've got a number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4 player, singles and doubles. But yeah, look, tennis is still very, very strong here in Australia. We don't probably have there's a mix of talent coming through. I'm a bit critical of some of Australian tennis in recent years with Bernard Tomic and Kyrgios. I'm not a fan. I think Kyrgios is trying very hard, but I'm openly critical of how arrogant they are and, quite frankly, un-Australian they are sometimes. So it's nice to see other guys coming through, and girls too. I think what our top female player has done for tennis, and she come from playing cricket for Australia. I mean, Ash is just amazing. And then the way she jumped back into tennis and what she's done and the way she's committed herself and improved has been outstanding. And she's great for tennis in Australia, and she's great for female sport.
Mm-hmm. All right. That's great, man. I was going to ask you about Kyrgios, because Kyrgios is growing on me, and he's definitely good for the sport because he has that entertainment factor. But have you noticed a little maturity coming out of him, or what's the take there from Australians? Do most Australians kind of feel the way you do?
Well, let me start with Tomic. I mean, around Australia, this is how well received, I'm being sarcastic. This is how badly received Tomic was. When he was playing tournaments like Wimbledon, people would get together and have Hope Tomic losers parties. So they would go and watch him play at people's friends' houses and have a beer and sit up at 10:30 at night here when Wimbledon comes on, hoping he would lose. I mean, that's how badly he was received. Now, look, I know him personally. I've actually played Bernard when he was a junior. I feel for him in some way because his dad's influence and that has not helped him as a person. It probably helped him get to where he was as a tennis player. But look, there's no doubt he's been abused. We've seen it firsthand. It's terrible.
We both knew him pretty well, and his dad is not a great
Johnny Stamanovic, who we talked about before, was his hitting partner, paid by Tennis Australia for 7 years. So, we all know each other pretty well. But Kyrgios is one of the most talented tennis players on the planet, without doubt. I mean, that is part of his entertainment factor. He needs a mentor, man. He needs someone that he respects enough to pull him into line, so he can not put out the fire within his belly that makes him so special as a player, but to give him some boundaries and help him find that Zen state that allows him to be his most natural self. So look, he's still young as a tennis player.
Do you think you could help him?
Hey?
You think you could help him?
No, I don't think I want to. I don't think I've got the endurance to
You wouldn't take that job.
I don't know. No, I don't think so. I don't know. I think he needs someone that he would really respect, and I'm not sure what that is for him. I don't know. I wish him the best. I hope he can find it, because I think he could be great for tennis. I think Tomic's days are over. I think if Kyrgios doesn't get it right, I don't think he'll ever win a Grand Slam until he does. He just can't keep coming up with consistent match after match to do it yet. And that consistency is going to come from his emotional state. Always does.
Cool. Okay, we have another one. This is from Rayon. From a coaching perspective, what's your style in dealing with players of yours that have lost a match? Would you give them tips before they head home, or wait till the next session?
I would normally I think it depends on the loss. If they've just lost a final that was really important to them, I would probably give them a period of time to grieve and let them move past it themselves. If it was a match where their behaviour cost them the match and they were carrying on and temper tantrums and all that sort of stuff and not sticking to a game plan that we had, I would give them immediate feedback after the match. I typically try and focus on a couple of key questions, and these are questions that you don't need a coach to ask you for. These are questions you can ask yourself. I think the beautiful thing about tennis is it's a sport where you need your coach on the practice court, but when you're on the playing field, it's you. And it's one of the things that bothered me about Kyrgios at the Australian Open. You guys all remember him looking at the box, and then he was getting annoyed when Hewitt wasn't standing on his feet clapping and all this sort of stuff. I don't know if you guys picked that up from over there, but man, when you're on the tennis court, you're on your own. That's tennis. the questions I would ask after a match is, okay, so what did you do right? Johnny knows I'd ask that.
Mm-hmm.
What did you do right? And what can you do to improve?